You're not even mine." The shout cracked through the freezing Pittsburgh Greyhound terminal like a slap of cold steel. Heads turned. A few lingered, then looked away the moment they realized it was someone else's problem. That was how public spaces worked. People cared, but only from a distance. 5-year-old Maya Williams stood trembling beside the metal bench, her thin pink jacket no match for the December wind sneaking in through the automatic doors. Her leg brace squeaked as she shifted, clutching the small velvet pouch that hung around her neck, the last keepsake from her mother. Inside, it was a tiny silver ring engraved with initials she could barely read. She held it tight whenever she felt scared. Today, she held it so tight her knuckles whitened. Franklin Reese, her mother's widower, the man she had been told to call Daddy, towered over her, face red, jaw clenched. He reeked of whiskey and something bitter she didn't have a name for. "You little brat," he hissed, "always crying, always slowing me down. I should have left you at the hospital the day your mother died." Maya's chin quivered. "Daddy, please. Don't say that. I can be better. I promise." Her plea only fueled his anger. He grabbed her arm and yanked hard. Maya stumbled, her leg brace catching the edge of the bench. She fell to the tile floor with a sharp thud. The velvet pouch slipped from her fingers and tumbled across the cold floor. "No," Maya gasped, scrambling after it. But Franklin reached it first. He picked up the pouch, sneered, and dangled it over her head. "This stupid little thing? You cry over this? Over everything?" "It's Mommy's," Maya whispered. "Please give it back." He dropped it only to crush the pouch under his boot, grinding down until the silver ring bent and snapped with a tiny metallic cry. Maya screamed, crawling forward with outstretched fingers. "Stop, please, please don't." "Oh, bah." Franklin stepped back, breathing hard, as if destroying the keepsake had relieved some weight on his chest. Then he pointed at her with a disgusted wave of his hand. "You're not my kid. Never were. I'm done pretending." She sobbed uncontrollably, hugging Ginger, the old stuffed horse she held like a lifeline. Franklin looked around once, making sure no one was paying attention. Then he leaned down, voice dripping cold. "You sit here, don't move. I'll be back with your ticket." The lie rolled off his tongue like something he'd rehearsed. Maya reached for him desperately, grasping his pant leg. "Daddy, please don't leave me. I'll be good. I'll be good. I promise." He shoved her hard. Her small body hit the bench, her brace skidding. She winced but didn't scream. This time she knew screaming only made things worse. Franklin turned and walked away. This time, he never looked back. The terminal swallowed him whole, a door hissing shut behind his disappearing figure. Maya sat there, tears streaming down her cheeks, staring at the mangled velvet pouch. She touched the broken ring with trembling fingers. It felt wrong, sharp, cold, like the world had shifted and left her behind. "Daddy," she whispered into the empty space. "Daddy, please come back." But the only answer was the distant rumble of buses and the chatter of strangers going somewhere she couldn't imagine. Minutes blurred into hours. People passed. No one stopped. Maya hugged Ginger to her chest, rocking slightly. "What do we do now, Ginger?" she whispered. "Where do we go?" Ginger had no answers. The sun dipped lower, staining the windows with orange streaks that made the station feel even lonelier. A janitor swept past, pausing only long enough to study the small, crumpled figure before shaking her head with a quiet, pained sigh. "Poor baby," she murmured, but kept moving. Outside, a sleek black sedan rolled to a stop at the curb. A tall man in a navy overcoat stepped out, leaving the warmth of the leather interior behind. Victor Hale, age 48, took a slow breath, the winter air biting his lungs. His driver had called in minutes earlier. Engine trouble. Stuck 2 blocks away. Victor had been on his way to a charity board meeting. something he no longer had the heart for but still attended out of obligation. His days were quiet, structured, and empty. Since the loss of his daughter, silence had become a second skin. He pushed open the terminal doors, looking for a seat or a place to call for a ride. But movement on his right caught his eye. A little girl, sitting alone, shoulders shaking, leg brace crooked, stuffed horse clutched like a lifeline, pouch torn, ring broken beside her. She wasn't just crying, she was defeated, and something inside Victor tightened, something that had been dormant for a long, long time. He forced himself to look away. Not your place, Hale. You've crossed paths with hurt before. It didn't end well, but then he heard it. A small, broken whisper. Ginger, what if he doesn't come back? What if he's gone? Victor's breath caught. He turned again, slowly. He walked toward her. Hey, he said softly, crouching down so he didn't tower over her. Are you all right? Maya looked up, startled. Tears clung to her lashes. Daddy said he's getting tickets. Victor looked around the terminal. Empty bench beside her. No bags. No adult hovering nearby. Just a half-ocrushed stuffed horse and a child desperately trying to believe a lie. And how long ago was that? He asked quietly. Maya pointed at the darkening windows. When the sun was up there. Her voice faltered. But it's almost night now. Victor exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment pressing into his chest. He gently picked up the broken ring. Is this yours? Maya shook her head. It was Mommy's, but he broke it. Her voice cracked. I don't think Daddy wants me anymore. Victor sat beside her, ignoring the cold metal against his coat. He spoke softly, like speaking to a wounded animal. Sometimes, people walk away not because of you, but because of what they can't face. Maya blinked, trying to understand. Victor looked toward the doors where Franklin had vanished, then back at the girl who waited for someone who was never coming. When the police arrived minutes later, Maya had fallen asleep against Victor's shoulder, still holding Ginger. Sir, can you stay until Child Services gets here? An officer asked. Victor didn't even hesitate. Yes, he said. He didn't know it then. But in that quiet terminal, in the cold glow of flickering lights, his life had already begun to change because of a girl who had lost everything and still whispered hope into a stuffed horse's ear. And because of a man who had lost everything and didn't yet know he was about to find someone worth staying for. If you felt Maya's pain, hit like and comment where you're watching from. Someone near you might be watching this story too. Victor Hale sat quietly on the cold bench beside Maya, his coat drawn tightly around his shoulders, but he barely felt the chill. The girl leaned against him, fast asleep, her small hand still gripping the mangled remains of the velvet pouch. Her breathing was soft and uneven, hiccuping now and then from the tears she had cried herself into. The terminal had grown quieter, the evening crowds thinned, and the last few buses of the night rumbled into their bays before retreating into the dark. He hadn't planned on being here. He hadn't planned on staying. But something about the way she had whispered to that broken stuffed horse had held him in place. Victor's phone buzzed in his coat pocket for the third time. He glanced at the screen, his assistant. He declined the call. Nothing he had planned tonight mattered anymore. A police officer walked back toward him, clipboard in hand. Mr. Hale, we're still waiting on someone from Child Protective Services. Should be here within the hour. Victor nodded. Any update on the man who left her? The officer's expression was unreadable. The vehicle we found is registered to a Franklin Reese. Parked about a mile from here. Abandoned. No sign of the driver. No prior custody filings. The girl's mother passed away 2 years ago. No living relatives on record so far. Victor looked down at Maya. Her leg brace was slightly askew, the strap twisted. He reached over carefully, adjusting it with a gentleness he hadn't exercised in years. She said he broke her mother's ring, Victor said quietly. The officer sighed. Unfortunately, we see this more than we'd like. Some people just walk away. Victor stared at the dim lighting above them. He thought of his own daughter Lena, who had once fallen asleep on his chest the same way, who used to wear ladybug socks and ask questions about the stars, who'd fought so hard through chemo, even when her tiny frame could barely handle it. But she had never been abandoned. He looked at Maya again. This girl had been left and she still waited. "Mr. Hale," the officer said gently, "you don't have to stay. We can take it from here." "I do," Victor said. "I really do." Maya stirred beside him. Her eyes blinked open, drowsy and glassy. She sat up slowly and looked around, disoriented. "Did Daddy come back yet?" she whispered. Victor's heart clenched. He hesitated. "No, sweetheart, not yet." Maya's lips trembled, but she didn't cry. She just hugged Ginger to her chest and nodded, like she was still holding onto a thread of belief that things would be okay. A short time later, a woman entered the terminal. She was in her late 40s, wearing a maroon coat and carrying a clipboard tucked beneath her arm. Her steps were brisk, practiced. She introduced herself with a tired smile. "Good evening. I'm Karen Riley, with Allegheny County Child Protective Services. Are you the Good Samaritan who stayed with her?" Victor stood. "Victor Hale." Karen blinked, recognizing the name, but said nothing. She turned to Maya, who had curled back into the bench, clutching her toy. "Hi, sweetie," Karen said gently, kneeling. "I'm going to take care of you tonight, okay?" Maya looked at Victor. "She's scared," he said softly. Karen nodded. "I'll get her somewhere warm. We have a temporary placement home nearby." Maya didn't resist as Karen helped her into a coat someone had brought over. But as she stood, she dropped Ginger. Victor picked up the stuffed horse and handed it back to her. "Here," he said. "Don't forget Ginger." Maya reached out but didn't take it right away. "Will you be there?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Victor knelt down, looked her in the eye. "I don't know where there is yet," he said, "but I'll find out. And yes, I'll visit you. I promise." Karen placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. "Let's go, sweetheart." As they walked away, Maya kept looking over her shoulder. Victor stood motionless until the doors closed behind them. Back outside, the air was colder. Victor climbed into the waiting sedan that had finally arrived. His driver offered him coffee and apologies. Victor waved them off. He sat back in silence. That night, as the car pulled through quiet Pittsburgh streets, Victor opened the velvet pouch he had salvaged. The ring was bent and scratched, but still whole enough to hold meaning. He rolled it between his fingers. He wondered how many times that little girl had held it and wished for her mother. He didn't sleep much. 2 days later, Victor walked into the foster center on the city's west side. It was a brick building with paint-chipped windows and a cheerful mural of smiling children painted along the wall. The receptionist looked up in surprise when she saw his name on the sign-in sheet. "Mr. Hale, this is unexpected. I'd like to visit Maya Williams." "Of course," she said, standing. "She's been very quiet since she got here. Doesn't talk to the other kids." Victor followed her down a hall filled with the sounds of cartoons and laughter from a nearby rec room. They entered a quieter side room where a few children were drawing. In the far corner, Maya sat at a small table, head bent over a piece of paper. Her leg brace was squeaking slightly with each movement, but she didn't seem bothered. Victor approached slowly. "Hey, Maya." She looked up. A smile crept across her face. "Bus man?" He chuckled. "That's me." She held up the paper. It was covered in strange symbols, circles, and lines, patterns that looked like pie charts, segmented evenly, with tiny numbers scribbled beside them. "Ginger says if you cut a big one into 3, you get forever 7s, she said matter-of-factly. Victor squinted at the numbers. "Repeating decimals?" She shrugged. "Maybe." One of the caretakers chuckled nearby. "She's been doing that since she got here. Doesn't say much, but she loves numbers. Like, really loves them." Victor knelt beside her and studied the paper. Something stirred in his gut. She wasn't just a smart kid. She was different. He glanced at the caregiver. Has she had any evaluations? We're looking into it, the woman replied. But honestly, you're the first person she's opened up to. Victor looked back at Maya, who was now humming softly, her eyes tracing invisible shapes in the air. She hadn't forgotten him, and he realized he couldn't forget her either. The following morning, Victor Hale stood outside the Allegheny County Family and Youth Evaluation Center. The sky was a sheet of pale gray, the kind that promised either snow or rain, but couldn't make up its mind. He held a paper cup of black coffee, untouched, cooling fast in his hand. Inside the building, Maya was scheduled for her first developmental screening. He had personally arranged the appointment the night before, pulled strings, called old friends, sent donations without being asked. He told himself it was just a check-in, a follow-up, nothing more. But his driver had parked, and Victor had come inside. The receptionist glanced up. "Mr. Hale, you're early." "I'm aware." She smiled politely and gestured toward the chairs near the play area. "You're welcome to wait. She should be out in 30 minutes or so." He nodded, sat, and watched. A young boy across the room was banging plastic blocks together while his exhausted mother tapped at her phone with one hand and steadied her toddler with the other. Life moved. People survived. He looked down at his phone, trying to distract himself, but his thoughts kept circling. Maya, the girl who counted decimals instead of dolls. 2 nights ago, he had reviewed her sketches, spirals, sequences, patterns. They weren't just doodles. They had structure, precision. She didn't know what she was doing, but she knew. He had seen this once before in a visiting fellowship student at MIT who could calculate prime patterns in his head. It was rare, brilliant, fragile, and now it sat inside a 5-year-old girl who'd been left with nothing but a broken ring and a stuffed horse. A door opened. The evaluator, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses and calm gray eyes, stepped out with a clipboard. "Mr. Hale?" He stood quickly. "I'm Dr. Summers. Maya just finished her first round. We did some nonverbal assessments, basic spatial reasoning tasks. She's in the adjoining room playing with pattern blocks." Victor nodded. "And?" Dr. Summers glanced at her clipboard, then back up. "Well, she's remarkable." Victor blinked. "Excuse me?" She performed spatial rotation tasks with 100% accuracy. Mental estimation puzzles advanced for her age group. She grouped objects by number properties without being asked. It's like she doesn't know why she understands it. She just does. Victor exhaled. "Is it possible she's a savant?" Dr. Summers hesitated. "It's early. We'll run more thorough evaluations. But yes, that's one possibility. Another is that she has extraordinary intuitive reasoning, especially in mathematics." Victor felt his heartbeat steady into something he hadn't experienced in years. Focus. "I'd like to get her into a private neurodevelopmental program," he said. "I'll cover everything." "Nah." The doctor raised an eyebrow. "Are you her guardian?" He paused. "No," he admitted, "but I'm working on it." Dr. Summers nodded slowly, as if weighing the weight of his words. "She's very attached to you. That's rare in these cases." "I didn't mean for it to happen," Victor said, more to himself than her. "It just did. Sometimes that's the best kind." They brought Maya out 10 minutes later, holding a small paper certificate with a gold star sticker. Her eyes lit up when she saw Victor. "You waited," she whispered. "Of course," he said, kneeling beside her. "How'd it go?" She handed him the certificate. She said, "I'm good at puzzles." Victor smiled. "I could have told her that." Maya looked down at her shoes, then up again. "Can I have pancakes?" He blinked. "You want pancakes?" She nodded. "With syrup and butter." It was the first time she had asked for anything. He stood and held out his hand. "Then we better find the best pancakes in town." That afternoon, They sat across from each other in a quiet corner booth at a diner off Carson Street. The place smelled of coffee and maple syrup, and the vinyl booths cracked when you leaned back. Maya was devouring a short stack. Victor stirred his coffee and watched her. He noticed the way she cut each pancake into exact quarters before eating. The way she lined up the syrup packets by color, then count. The way she whispered numbers under her breath when she thought he wasn't listening. She wasn't broken. She was brilliant. But brilliance didn't protect children from being discarded. Not in the system, not in the world. "Do you remember your mom?" Victor asked softly. Maya paused, then nodded. "She sang to me when my leg hurt." "What did she sing?" Maya squinted, thinking, "A song with stars." Victor swallowed hard. "That sounds beautiful." She had a necklace with a silver ring," Maya added, quieter now. "She said it was special." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the crushed velvet pouch. Maya's eyes widened. You kept it?" He handed it to her gently. "I thought it belonged with you." She took it in her small hands and pressed it to her chest, saying nothing. Her lower lip trembled slightly, but she blinked away the tears. "I thought Daddy threw it away forever." Not everything stays broken," Victor said softly. "Some things just need someone to fix them." Maya looked up at him. Her eyes were the color of rich earth after rain. "Are you someone?" Victor didn't answer, but he reached across the table and held her hand. That night, Victor sat in his study, surrounded by warm lamplight and the soft tick of a grandfather clock. On his desk sat an open folder, Maya's file. He had requested every detail that existed, and while the pages were thin, the story was heavy. No legal guardianship, no social security number on record, no schooling, no health insurance. She was a ghost in the system, but now she wasn't invisible. He turned the last page, then picked up the phone. "Get my lawyer," he said. "Tonight." Franklin Reese sat on the edge of a motel bed that sagged in the middle, staring at the flickering television screen as if it held answers he'd misplaced years ago. The carpet smelled like old cigarettes. The air tasted like regret. A half-finished bottle of cheap whiskey sat on the nightstand beside him, its amber glow the only warm thing in the room. He hadn't planned to stop driving. He hadn't planned to sleep here. He hadn't planned much of anything, if he was being honest, least of all abandoning a child who trusted him. But he did it anyway. He rubbed his hands over his face, stubble scratching against his palms. "Damn it, Naomi," he muttered to the empty room. "You left me with all of this." The knock came at 8:17 p.m. Firm, not polite, purposeful. Franklin flinched, grabbed the bottle, drank straight from it. Who the hell? Another knock, this one sharper. Franklin stumbled to the door, peeking through the peephole. A man, tall, dark coat, eyes too steady to be a drunk or a cop on routine patrol. Franklin felt a jolt of panic. He'd seen those eyes once in a newspaper, years ago. Or maybe on TV, someone who didn't belong here. He cracked the door an inch. "What do you want?" "Franklin Reese?" "Who's asking?" The man didn't bother answering. He pushed the door open with one hand and stepped inside with the calm confidence of someone who didn't need permission. Franklin cursed and backed away. Hey, what the hell, you can't just..." "I'm Victor Hale," the man said, closing the door behind him. Franklin froze. The name hit him like a punch to the gut. He wasn't rich, but he knew enough. Everyone knew the Hales. Philanthropist. Tech magnate. The kind of man who had wings of hospitals named after him. Franklin's heart pounded. I don't know what you want, but I didn't steal nothing. This isn't about money," Victor said. There was no threat in his voice. No raised tone. No anger. That somehow made it worse. Franklin swallowed. "Then why are you here?" Victor reached into his coat and placed something gently on the table between them. "Ginger." "The stuffed horse." Franklin's face went pale. "You left her Victor said quietly. You left the child at a bus terminal. Franklin backed into the wall as if he needed something solid to hold him up. She ain't mine. I told her that every damn day. She ain't mine. She's 5, Victor replied. She believes what adults tell her, even when it hurts. Franklin snorted, though his voice cracked. You think I don't know that? You think I didn't try? I lost my wife, and they expect me to raise that kid with the brace, that kid who cries over everything. I'm not cut out for that. Victor's jaw tightened. You don't get to call her that, kid. She has a name. Franklin looked away. I know her name. Say it. Silence, then a broken whisper. Maya. Victor nodded slightly. Better. Franklin shook his head, rubbing his temples. Naomi died in that stupid car wreck. They said Maya was in the back seat, strapped in, unharmed. I looked at her, and all I saw was the life I'd just lost. The life she still had. His voice trembled. I tried for 2 years. I really did. But she ain't mine. She ain't. His breath shuddered. She ain't Naomi. Victor took a step closer. Children aren't meant to replace the dead. Franklin looked up sharply. You're one to talk? I saw your interviews. Your speeches. You lost a daughter too, right? And you're here lecturing me? Victor's eyes softened, but his voice didn't. Yes. I lost my daughter. I held her hand until she couldn't hold mine back. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. And I would have given everything I own to have her for one more day. Franklin blinked rapidly, face contorting. Then why are you here? Because Maya is still alive. Franklin sagged onto the edge of the bed again. I can't do it. I just can't. When I saw her today, whining, clinging to that stupid toy horse, his throat tightened. It felt like the world was choking me. Like I couldn't breathe. That's not her fault. I know, Franklin shouted, then immediately winced at the echo in the small room. I know, he repeated, quieter. I ain't the man she needs. Victor stared at him for a long moment. No, he said softly. You're not. Franklin looked up sharply, surprised at the bluntness. But I can be, Victor continued. The room felt cold. Franklin swallowed. What does that mean? I want to take responsibility for her. Legally. Permanently. Franklin stared, then let out a hollow laugh. You want to adopt her? Yes, Victor said simply. No court will give a billionaire someone else's kid, Franklin muttered. Unless, he trailed off. Victor waited. The realization sank into Franklin slowly, then all at once. You want my signature? Victor reached inside his coat again. This time, he pulled out a manila envelope. He set it on the table beside Ginger. Your signature, Victor confirmed. Nothing more. Franklin stared at the envelope as if it were burning. They'll ask questions, he whispered. They'll want to know why. Victor looked him straight in the eyes. Tell them the truth. Franklin shook his head again, then again harder, as if fighting an invisible enemy. I can't face her. I can't look her in the eyes and tell her I'm giving her up. You won't have to, Victor said. Franklin froze, then his shoulders slumped, hands trembling. He reached for the pen. Victor slid toward him. He signed without reading. When he finished, a single tear hit the page. She'll hate me, he murmured. No, Victor said. She'll heal. Franklin put his head in his hands. Why you? Why do you care? Victor held up Ginger. Because she cared, he answered. About a toy that loved her more than you did. Franklin let out a strangled sound, half laugh, half sob. Victor turned to leave. He paused at the door. One day, he said quietly, you'll regret walking away. Franklin didn't look up. I already do. Victor walked out into the biting night air, Ginger tucked safely under his arm. He exhaled, long and controlled. He didn't feel triumphant, have felt responsible. And somewhere in the quiet of the empty parking lot, under the dim yellow lights that hummed faintly overhead, Victor realized a truth he wasn't ready to say aloud. He hadn't gone there to save a child. He'd gone there because a child had started saving him. Snow flurried lightly over Pittsburgh as Victor stepped out of the plane and into the brisk mountain air of Colorado. The flight had been last minute, booked just hours after Franklin signed the guardianship relinquishment papers. Victor had returned home briefly to regroup, to breathe, and to make sure everything was ready for Maya before he brought her here into a life so different from the one she had known that it felt dangerous to imagine. He wasn't sure why he felt nervous. Perhaps because caring for someone who needed him, really needed him, felt like stepping onto a frozen lake he hadn't tested. Every movement mattered. By late morning, he was standing inside the glass entry hall of the Hale residence, staring at the silent expanse he had once called home. Tall ceilings, modern art, polished hardwood floors, fresh flowers his staff replaced every other day even though no one noticed. Everything was immaculate. Everything was empty. He touched the back of a chair at the dining table. He remembered Lena sitting here with a coloring book, her feet not reaching the floor. He remembered the way she hummed when she was happy. He remembered the oxygen tubes in her nose when she wasn't. He closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them again and turned toward the staircase. The staff had followed his instructions precisely. In the room at the end of the hall, the lights glowed warm and soft. A patchwork quilt covered a small bed. A shelf held a few picture books. A nightlight shaped like a smiling moon sat on the dresser. It was simple, but not cold. Gentle. Everything a child deserved. He walked farther in and noticed the most important detail. Ginger, the stuffed horse, sitting upright against the pillows, waiting. When his phone buzzed, Victor didn't look at the caller ID. He answered immediately. "She's ready to see you," the foster center coordinator said. "Are you still coming today?" "Yes," Victor said. "I'll be there in an hour." Maya sat in the foster center's playroom, not playing. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, her gaze fixed on the window where sunlight made shifting patterns across the carpet. She didn't look up when Victor stepped into the room, but he noticed her shoulders lift slightly, as if she had recognized the rhythm of his footsteps. He crouched beside her. "Hi, Maya." Her fingers twitched. "You came back again?" "Of course." She looked down at her shoes. "Sometimes people don't. Sometimes they say they will, but then they don't." "Abege." Her voice was matter-of-fact, not bitter, not angry. "Just true. I'm not sometimes," Victor said. She finally lifted her gaze to him. Soft, unsure, hoping. They drove in silence for a while. Maya buckled carefully in the back seat. Ginger held against her chest. The mountains rose like sleeping giants as they made their way toward the Hale residence. Maya watched everything, the snow, the trees, the passing towns with wide eyes. "Are we going far?" she asked. "Just home," Victor answered. She didn't ask who's home. She simply nodded. When they pulled into the driveway, Maya looked up at the house with her mouth slightly open. "Is this where you live?" "Yes." Her fingers tightened around Ginger, not in fear but in awe. "Is it okay if I go inside?" Victor smiled faintly. "It's more than okay. It's for you." He opened the door, and Maya stepped into the foyer. The polished floors reflected the soft glow of the chandelier. She craned her neck to take in the height of the ceiling. "Is this all one house?" "Yes. It's really big. It feels smaller now," he said quietly. Maya didn't understand, but she sensed something tender in the way he said it. She reached for his hand, small, hesitant, and he let her hold it. "Can I see my room?" she asked. He led her down the hallway, past framed photographs in quiet corners. When they reached the door to the room he had prepared, Victor paused. "Ready?" he asked. Maya nodded. He opened the door. Warm light spilled out. The quilt, the books, the moon-shaped nightlight, the window looking out on the mountains beyond. And Ginger, waiting. Maya inhaled sharply. "That's my horse. I made sure he got here first," Victor said. She ran to the bed, her gait uneven because of the leg brace, and scooped Ginger into her arms. She pressed her cheek to its worn fabric and let out a shaky breath, almost a sob. Then she turned. "Is this really for me?" "Everything in this room," Victor said softly, "is for you." She took one slow step toward him, then another. Then she wrapped her arms around his waist. He froze, not because he didn't want the hug, but because it had been so long since the last time someone this small had reached for him. Her head barely reached his ribs. Her hair smelled like baby shampoo and crayons. "I never had a room before," she whispered. He rested his hand gently on her back. "You do now." Maya pulled away just enough to look up at him. Her eyes were wet but steady. "You're not going to leave me, right?" Victor knelt until he was level with her. "No," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." She nodded slowly, as if letting the words settle into a place inside her that had never been filled. Later, after Maya explored every inch of the room and fell asleep curled against Ginger beneath the patchwork quilt, Victor stood in the doorway, watching her chest rise and fall. A small sound drifted up the stairs, the grandfather clock striking 8. Its chime echoed softly through the house. The house wasn't empty tonight. Victor closed his eyes and whispered something he'd been afraid to say out loud for years. "Welcome home, Maya." The following week settled like a quiet snowfall, soft, measured, but undeniably changing everything it touched. Victor kept his schedule light, intentionally staying close to home. Meetings were held virtually, phone calls kept short. He told his assistant he was taking a sabbatical, but the truth was simpler. He didn't want to miss anything. Maya was adjusting. Cautiously, she still moved through the house like a guest, always asking before touching anything, always cleaning up after herself. She ate slowly, like meals might be taken away if she didn't finish properly. She whispered when she spoke, and when she slept, she kept Ginger clutched tight in one arm and the velvet pouch still holding the broken ring in the other. But each day, something new unfolded. She began humming in the mornings. She asked what certain buttons did. She giggled softly when the housekeeper, Ellen, taught her how to make pancakes shaped like snowmen. Victor began to keep a notepad on his desk titled, "Things Maya Says." At the top were, "Does snow know it's falling? If you draw a circle forever, is it still a shape or a story? Why do clocks tick but hearts don't?" But perhaps the most important came on the 4th day, when Victor found her sitting on the floor of the study surrounded by graph paper. He had stepped in with a folder under his arm, expecting silence, but stopped at the sight before him. Maya had arranged pencils, uncapped markers, and a few sheets of crisp grid paper in neat rows. She was drawing again, circles, spirals, arcs that overlapped and connected. Some were divided into 3, 5, or 7 parts, each segment shaded differently. Beside them were strings of numbers, like 0.333, 0.142857, 0.666, repeating like chants. Victor crouched beside her. "What are you working on?" he asked. She looked up. "I was thinking." "About what?" She tapped one of the spirals. "If numbers could talk, what would they say?" He smiled gently. "I imagine they'd say something like, 1 step at a time." Maya tilted her head, then nodded. "Like music." Victor's breath caught. "What do you mean, like music?" She pointed to one of the drawings. "This one feels like a hum, like when the wind moves outside but doesn't knock anything over." "May." Victor sat down fully now, intrigued. "Do you always feel numbers?" Maya shrugged. "I don't know. They're just there. They come and go like songs. I just draw them when they stay too long." He blinked slowly, heart picking up pace. He recognized this kind of thinking. Abstract, pattern-based, intuitive. He had seen it in one of the most brilliant minds in theoretical mathematics years ago, but never in a child, especially not one abandoned by the system. "Would you like to work with someone who can help you understand these better?" he asked gently. "Someone who knows a lot about numbers?" Maya's eyes narrowed, not in suspicion, but in concentration. Will they let me draw how I see them? Yes, Victor said. They'll help you draw even more. She thought about it, then nodded slowly. I think I'd like that. The next morning, Victor made a call to Dr. Naomi Caldwell, a leading cognitive psychologist and neurodevelopmental researcher who had once studied gifted children with visual numeric synesthesia. She owed him a favor from an education grant he'd funded 5 years ago. He didn't have to explain much. The phrase, mathematical intuition in a 5-year-old, was enough. By the end of the call, Dr. Caldwell had arranged to visit in person. Don't test her like a subject, Victor warned before hanging up. Talk to her like an artist. Dr. Caldwell arrived 2 days later, a tall, silvery-haired woman with thick glasses and a coat that smelled of peppermint. She greeted Maya with a warm smile and a notebook full of blank pages. Maya studied her in silence for a full minute before speaking. You look like you read a lot. Dr. Caldwell chuckled. I do, but I'd rather listen to you today. They sat at the dining table for almost an hour, Victor nearby, but not intruding as Maya explained her circle stories and forever numbers. She showed her drawings, pointed out the rhythms, and whispered that sometimes Ginger told her which shape came next. Dr. Caldwell took careful notes, asked open-ended questions, and only once corrected Maya's use of the word curvy triangles. At the end of the session, she asked Maya if she'd like to build something using blocks and graph tiles. Maya's eyes lit up. Yes, but only if I can use blue first. Why blue? Dr. Caldwell asked. Because it's the calmest number, Maya said as if it were obvious. After Maya had gone upstairs for her nap, Dr. Caldwell turned to Victor in the study. She's not just gifted, she said. She's expressing a rare cross-modal perception. She may not know traditional equations, but she's sensing symmetry, recursion, even elements of prime groupings. Victor listened without blinking. In short, she continued, this little girl might be one of the most naturally intuitive mathematical thinkers I've encountered in 20 years. Victor ran a hand over his mouth. What do we do next? Dr. Caldwell didn't hesitate. Keep her safe, keep her curious, and whatever you do, don't let anyone try to standardize her. That night, Victor walked past Maya's room and saw the light still on beneath her door. He knocked gently. Still awake? Maya's voice floated back. I'm making a map of stars. He opened the door. She was sitting in bed with a notebook on her lap, drawing spirals and dots across the page, tiny numbers labeled each one. Will they help me count them someday? She asked. Who? The people you talk to. Victor stepped closer. They'll help you count them, and maybe the world will count on you. Maya looked up, eyes wide. That's a big job. Victor smiled, brushing a stray curl from her forehead. You're a big soul. No. She nodded once, then whispered, Thank you for letting me stay. You're not staying, Victor said softly. You live here now. She blinked slowly. Then I want to keep counting. Forever. Victor leaned down and kissed the top of her head. Then I'll be here, counting with you. 3 weeks later, on a cloudy Monday morning, a newspaper article changed everything. Victor was seated at the kitchen table with a cup of tea cooling beside his laptop. Maya was in the sunroom, cross-legged on the rug, building concentric towers from colored blocks. She called them echo castles and said they were based on how numbers whispered to each other when no one listened. Victor had gotten used to her language. It wasn't just whimsical, it was precise in its own way. The soft jingle of Ellen, the housekeeper, setting down the mail broke the calm. Morning paper, Mr. Hale, she said. Thank you, Ellen. As. She left without another word. As usual, quiet but dependable. A woman who had worked for Victor long before Lena's diagnosis and long after the funeral. She never asked questions, never pried, but lately she had begun leaving Maya little notes on napkins. Your smile is stronger than my coffee. Blueberries count too. Maya loved them. Victor unfolded the paper lazily, just another habit, but his eyes froze the moment they landed on page A3. Abandoned girl with rare talent finds home with billionaire. There was a small photo, Maya's back, seated at a table filled with papers and markers. Her curls were unmistakable. Beside her, Victor stood, slightly out of focus. The article had clearly been sourced from someone at the foster agency, leaked without permission. Someone had decided it was too human a story to keep quiet. Victor set the paper down. He read it again. His stomach tightened not because of shame, but because of how delicate things had become. Footsteps approached. Maya peeked into the kitchen. "Did I do something?" she asked. Victor quickly folded the paper and slid it under a book. "No, not at all." She looked skeptical. "You look like you saw a sad number." He smiled faintly. "Maybe I did." She wandered in and sat at the table, dropping a drawing next to his teacup. It was a spiral made of stars, each connected by a tiny dotted line. She'd started adding words to her diagrams, labels like stillness, noise, safe, not safe. He noticed she placed their house firmly in the middle of safe. That afternoon, the calls began. First, a reporter from a national magazine. Then 2 nonprofits wanting interviews. Then a well-meaning educational documentary producer asking if Maya would like to share her story with the world. Victor declined them all. He knew the type. They wanted tragedy that became miracle, pain that could be polished. A little girl with big eyes who could sell hope between commercial breaks. But Maya wasn't a symbol. She was still healing. That evening, Victor stood in his study and called Dr. Naomi Caldwell. "You saw the paper?" he asked. "Everyone saw the paper. She's not ready for this." "I agree. Keep her close. But also don't underestimate how quickly brilliance attracts attention, especially brilliance with a backstory." Victor stared out the window, watching dusk settle over the mountains. "She's not ready to be famous," he said. "She doesn't have to be," Naomi replied. "She just has to be seen by the right people, in the right ways." After the call, Victor walked to the sunroom where Maya had fallen asleep beneath a knitted throw. The graph paper lay across her stomach, and Ginger was tucked under one arm. Her drawings had changed again. Now they were forming shapes that mimicked orbital models, planets circling imaginary centers. He sat beside her, took the paper gently, and whispered, "You've got galaxies in your head, kid." She stirred. "You said something?" she mumbled. "No," he said softly. "You just keep dreaming." The next morning, Victor visited the foster agency in person. He met with the director, a man named Richard Cole, who looked apologetic before Victor even sat down. "It was leaked without our consent," Richard said quickly. "A volunteer thought it would inspire donors." "It inspired a media circus," Victor replied. "I understand." "No, I don't think you do," Victor said. "That girl has already been put through a test most adults couldn't survive. She's just starting to trust the world again. I won't let a headline take that from her." Richard nodded slowly. "We're launching an internal review." "But Mr. Hale," Victor raised an eyebrow. "Yes? You should know that the article caught the attention of the Department of Child Welfare. They're asking questions about the legal transition of guardianship." Victor's jaw tightened. "It's been filed." "It has. But when cases become high profile, scrutiny increases. They may reopen evaluations. Ask Maya if she remembers her biological ties. In cases like this, they often request psychological interviews." Victor exhaled. "She's 5. She doesn't need interviews, she needs stability." "I agree," Richard said, "but I'm not the one asking." Victor stood. "Then I'll answer for her." That night, he sat down with Maya in the library, a space she had claimed as her favorite because books smell like warm leaves. She was curled in the armchair, Ginger seated upright beside her like a co-pilot. "I need to talk to you," Victor said. Maya looked up. "Is it a number talk or a people talk?" "People talk." She nodded solemnly and sat straighter. "Some people are asking questions," he said gently, "about where you came from, about what you remember." I remember the cold bench, she said quietly, and him yelling, and the pouch. Victor swallowed. You may be asked about that again. And it's okay to say what you feel. You don't have to protect anyone. Maya thought for a long time. Will they take me away? No, he said firmly. You sound sure. I am sure. She tilted her head. Because you're the grown-up. He leaned closer. Because I'm your grown-up. She didn't smile, but she nodded. Then she asked, Can I draw a forever house tomorrow? Absolutely. Victor spent the rest of the evening reviewing legal paperwork with his attorney. He reinforced every aspect of his guardianship claim. He scheduled new evaluations with Dr. Caldwell and added security filters to all incoming calls. He even sent a note to the newspaper editor demanding they blur Maya's face in any future image. The world, he realized, was starting to pull on a thread he had barely tied together, but he would hold it fast. He owed her that, because Maya didn't just draw patterns on paper. She was the pattern, and he wouldn't let the world tear it apart. The room was too white, too clean, too quiet. Victor sat on one side of the observation glass, jaw tight, fingers steepled beneath his chin. On the other side, Maya sat in a gray chair that was too tall for her legs dangling, her brace creaking softly each time she shifted. The room was designed for comfort rounded edges, pastel toys in the corner, a mural of animals playing hopscotch on the far wall, but Victor saw it for what it was. A test disguised as kindness. Across from Maya sat Dr. Claire Anders, a licensed child psychologist hired by the state. She wore a soft pink cardigan, a practiced smile, and a voice like silk. Hi, Maya, she said gently. Can I sit with you a little while and talk? Maya nodded, eyes downcast. Ginger sat in her lap, as usual, his stitching slightly frayed around one ear. Victor had offered to repair it twice. She'd refused both times. I like your friend, Dr. Anders said, gesturing to the horse. What's his name? Ginger, Maya said quietly. That's a nice name. Did someone give him to you? Maya didn't answer. Dr. Anders tried again. Do you remember where you first met Ginger? Maya looked up. With Mommy, the psychologist smiled. You remember your mommy? Maya nodded. What do you remember about her? She sang about stars, Maya whispered. When my leg hurt. Victor leaned forward slightly in his seat, barely breathing. That sounds like a lovely song, Dr. Anders said. Do you remember anyone else from when you were with your mommy? Franklin. Dr. Anders paused. And who is Franklin? Maya didn't speak. Is he your daddy? No, she said quickly, her voice sharper now. Did he say he was your daddy? Maya looked down at Ginger. He said I wasn't his. Victor's fists clenched. Dr. Anders adjusted her tone. And what happened the day you met Victor Hale? Maya's eyes softened. He waited with me. What else? He listened. To what? Maya paused. To the quiet. Dr. Anders wrote something on her clipboard. And do you feel safe with Victor? Yes. Why? Maya looked up, confused. Why wouldn't I? Victor couldn't help but smile, just faintly. Dr. Anders smiled too. That's a very good answer, Maya. Thank you. Later, in a closed-door meeting with Victor, Dr. Anders gave her preliminary report. She's guarded, but she's resilient. Clearly bonded with you. That's rare, considering her abandonment trauma. Victor nodded slowly. She's not what they expect, is she? Dr. Anders considered the question. She's different. Highly intuitive. Possibly on the edge of an uncommon neurodevelopmental profile. But more than that, she's observant in ways that don't match her age. She's been through more than most adults. Yes, but she's also recovering faster than most adults would. Victor studied the glass again. Will they still challenge the adoption? He asked. Dr. Anders exhaled. They might. The story's too public now. And when people see headlines like, Billionaire adopts abandoned prodigy, They assume the worst. Victor's voice grew cold. She's not a project. She's not an accessory. She's a child. I know, and I believe you, but the system is built to mistrust sudden goodness. Victor's expression didn't change. Then I'll fight the system. Back home, Maya sat in her room, building patterns with dominoes. She'd arranged them into concentric spirals again, each color-coded. The outer ring was purple, then green, then yellow. Each piece was placed with surgical care. Victor stood in the doorway, watching. "Is that for me?" he asked softly. "No," she said. "It's for the questions. The ones from today?" Maya nodded. "Did they hurt?" She shrugged. "Not like before, but different." Though calm, Victor entered the room and sat beside her on the carpet. He noticed the purple pieces had tiny chalk marks on them. She'd started labeling them with numbers. Some were primes. Some weren't. But they weren't random. They never were. "They asked if I felt safe," she said. "And what did you say?" "That I do." "Good," Victor said. "Because you are." Maya tilted her head. "Are you scared?" Victor blinked. "Why would I be scared?" "Because when you're scared, your voice gets smaller, but still deep." He laughed quietly. "You're terrifyingly perceptive." "What's perceptive?" "It means you see things most people miss." "Oh," Maya said. "That's how I do numbers." She leaned against him then, pressing her shoulder to his arm. "I can hear which ones belong together, even when they don't look like it." Victor stared ahead, heart slowing. "And people?" he asked. "Can you hear which people belong together?" She nodded against him. "Sometimes." Do you think we belong together?" Maya didn't hesitate. "You waited," she said simply. Victor felt something unspool in his chest, a knot he didn't realize was still there. He kissed the top of her head, like he used to do with Lena, and then she said, "They asked if I wanted to live here forever." Victor held his breath. "What did you say?" "I said I already do." That night, Victor couldn't sleep. He paced the halls of the house, stopping by Maya's room once, then twice. She was asleep both times, Ginger tucked under one arm, a drawing still in her hand. The third time, he found himself in the room across the hall, Lena's old bedroom. It hadn't changed much. He hadn't let anyone pack it away. The wallpaper still held stars and planets. The bed still covered in a pink comforter with moons on it. He stood there a long time, then walked in. He opened the bottom drawer of the desk and found the journal. Lena's galaxy log, written in crayon on the cover. He flipped through pages filled with imagined planets and stories about space cats and constellations that spoke to each other in riddles. And then he saw it. A page near the end. It read, "When I go, I hope Daddy finds someone to talk to the stars with." Victor sat down hard, and for the first time in years, he cried. Not because he was broken, but because something was being put back together. The summons came by courier. Thick white envelope, government seal. Victor Hale read it in silence, his jaw set, the letter trembling ever so slightly between his fingers. It was an official notice from the Department of Child Welfare. A hearing, in 2 weeks, to assess the long-term suitability and legality of guardianship for minor, Maya Williams. He reread the line twice. Despite all he had done, despite the reports, the progress, the evaluations somewhere in an office under fluorescent lights, someone had ticked a box and decided Maya's safety was still negotiable. Victor folded the letter and placed it on the kitchen counter, next to Maya's half-eaten toast. She had drawn a smiley face in syrup with her spoon that morning. It was already beginning to melt. By late afternoon, Victor was in a downtown law office, 14th floor. Corner conference room, seated across from a man in a gray three-piece suit who smelled faintly of eucalyptus and ambition. "Mr. Hale," the man began, clasping his hands, "I've reviewed the case. Impressive preparation, expert witnesses, psychological assessments, a private security detail for the child, and yet, Victor raised an eyebrow. Yet you're not family, not even distantly. No blood relation, no marriage tie. And this is a black child, with no official documentation regarding heritage, custody, or lineage. Victor didn't flinch. I didn't adopt her for her bloodline. I adopted her because I found her sitting alone on a bus bench with no one left. The lawyer nodded once. Morally admirable. Legally complicated. Victor's voice turned to steel. Are you saying I should have left her there? No, the man replied. I'm saying the court will ask why you didn't contact extended kin, or wait for official placement. Why you acted on your own. Victor leaned forward. Because the system doesn't move fast enough to catch a falling child. The lawyer scribbled something in a yellow legal pad. I'm on your side, Mr. Hale. But this hearing? It's not about kindness. It's about precedent. Victor stood abruptly. Then we'll make one. At home, Maya sat on the porch swing, drawing on the inside cover of a cereal box with colored pencils. The wind tugged at her curls. She was humming something off-key but joyful. Victor stepped out and sat beside her. Can I see what you're making? She held it up, a swirl of stars again. This time, though, the stars had names. Some were real, like Rigel and Antares, but in the center, written in bright purple crayon, was Maya Minor. Victor smiled. Is that a new constellation? No, she said. It's a galaxy. Just mine. She studied him. You look tired. I am. Did you talk to the suit people again? He exhaled. Yes. Are they the ones deciding if I can stay? They're going to try. Maya looked down at her drawing, then back at him. If they don't let me stay, will I have to go back to the loud place? No, Victor said firmly. Never again. Even if they make you? Victor reached for her hand. They don't get to make me. Not when it comes to you. She nodded. Because I'm your galaxy now. He smiled softly. Exactly. Later that evening, Victor called Dr. Caldwell. I need help, he said. With Maya? No, with the hearing. I need every professional voice you can get. Not just psychologists, educators, advocates, anyone who can speak to what's possible when someone like Maya gets the right support. Dr. Caldwell didn't hesitate. I know exactly who to call. Over the next week, Maya noticed something strange. People kept showing up at the house. Not strangers, but smart-looking people with warm voices and clipboards. One was a professor who let her explain why circles were the shyest shape. Another was a robotics engineer who brought a puzzle she couldn't solve until she asked, what if it spins instead of clicks? Each guest listened. Genuinely. They didn't test her. They explored with her. And Victor always stood nearby, just watching, silently proud. One evening, after a researcher left, Maya looked up from her notebook. Why are all these grown-ups coming to see me? Victor sat beside her. Because they want to learn how your mind works. She frowned. Is that bad? No, he said. It's beautiful. She leaned against him. I don't want to go anywhere else. You won't. Promise? I do. The night before the hearing, Victor stood alone in his study, surrounded by files, reports, and legal briefs. He wasn't nervous. He was furious. Because somewhere out there, someone still believed that family only came through blood, that a child who had been discarded like trash could only be saved through a bureaucratic chain of paperwork. Victor knew better. He remembered how Maya cried in her sleep for the first 2 weeks. He remembered her silence. He remembered the trembling way she clung to Ginger like the world would vanish if she let go. And he remembered the first time she laughed, really laughed, watching a snowflake melt on her hand and whisper, "It tickled." No court would tell him that wasn't real. That night, before bed, Maya stopped at Victor's doorway, holding a rolled-up piece of paper. "I made you something," she said. He smiled. "Let's see it." She unrolled it carefully. It was a drawing of 2 figures, one tall and one small, standing under a spiral of stars. Written above them in crooked crayon was, We go together like stars and stories. Victor felt something pressed deep in his chest. Do I have to be brave tomorrow? Maya asked. Yes, he said, but I'll be brave with you. In the darkness, after Maya was asleep, Victor stood at the foot of her bed and whispered into the quiet. Whatever it takes, Maya, whatever it takes. Because she wasn't just a girl he found. She was the reason he was found. And tomorrow, the world would hear their story. It was raining the morning of the hearing. A steady, misty rain, neither violent nor gentle. Just enough to make the courthouse steps slick and the sky gray like wet slate. Victor stood under a large black umbrella, the collar of his navy coat turned up against the chill, Maya's small hand tucked into his gloved one. She wore her favorite blue dress with the stitched white stars, and her curls had been carefully brushed and pinned with 2 silver clips. Ginger, ever loyal, was clutched under her arm like a shield. Neither of them spoke as they walked through the courthouse doors. But Victor could feel her grip tighten slightly. Not in fear. In readiness. The courtroom was cold. Wood-paneled walls, high ceilings. A digital clock ticked above the door with military precision. The judge, a silver-haired woman named Honorable Evelyn Carter, sat behind a massive bench, her expression unreadable. To the left, the state representative, a man in a crisp gray suit with round glasses and a folder too thick for comfort. To the right, Victor and Maya, flanked by their legal team, and Dr. Caldwell seated behind them like a calm anchor. The bailiff called the room to order. Victor had been in thousands of rooms like this. Boardrooms, investor meetings, political fundraisers, but never had he felt the stakes so intimately, so inescapably. It wasn't business. It was bloodless war. And Maya was the flag. The state's opening remarks were polite, too polite. This is not an accusation, the attorney began, but an evaluation. Mr. Hale's guardianship of Maya Williams has garnered national attention. We simply ask, is this in her best interest? Long term? They mentioned Maya's race. They mentioned Victor's wealth. They mentioned the speed of the placement, the unusual lack of biological connection, and the so-called media narrative. They never mentioned Maya's trauma. They never said her name like it meant anything. Victor's jaw tightened with every sentence. Then it was his turn. He stood slowly, his tailored coat hugging his frame like armor. When I found Maya, she was sitting alone at a bus stop. He began. Her clothes were wet. Her hand was bleeding. She had been left. Not forgotten left. There's a difference. Someone chose to discard her. A murmur rippled through the gallery. He continued, voice steady. Since then, she's taught me what courage looks like when it's 5 years old and wearing a leg brace. She's drawn things I can barely understand. She hums when she's solving equations. She tells time by feelings. She's not just surviving, she's creating. He paused, then added softly, she's not my blood, she's my bond. The courtroom fell still. Then came the witnesses. Dr. Caldwell spoke first. Eloquent and exact. She described Maya's rare neurointuition, her emotional intelligence, her ability to detect abstract patterns in sound and shape. She's not a prodigy because she solves problems, Dr. Caldwell said. She's a prodigy because she sees problems before they exist. And she feels safe enough with Mr. Hale to share them. Then came Miss Ellen, the housekeeper, who described Maya's bedtime routines, her growing confidence, her love for blueberry pancakes, and making paper galaxies with crayons. She brings joy into that house, Ellen said, and she sleeps now, every night. That didn't happen at first. Next, a child advocate who reviewed Maya's previous files, hospital records, abandonment report, foster care intake stood and said, if she had stayed in the system, her odds of thriving would have been close to none. Mays, they weren't exaggerating. They were painting truth. But the defense had one more tactic. They called Franklin. Victor's body tensed the moment he entered, same stoop-shouldered frame, same hollow eyes. He wore a cheap suit and held his head low. But Victor could feel the weight of the moment crawling in on Maya like a cold shadow. She stiffened beside him. "Do I have to look at him?" she whispered. "No," Victor said. "Look at me." Franklin sat, cleared his throat. "I wasn't trying to hurt her," he mumbled. "You left her on a bench," the judge said evenly. "She ain't mine. Not really. Her mama she passed and I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't raise no kid with problems. I'm just a man trying to get by." Victor almost stood. Maya's hand caught his. "Don't," she whispered. He looked down. Her eyes were steady. Hay already left. Franklin was dismissed, and the courtroom was silent again. After a short recess, Judge Carter returned. She reviewed her notes slowly, deliberately. "I have reviewed the documentation, the testimonials, and the psychological evaluations. I have also observed Maya Williams throughout this hearing, her behavior, her demeanor, and her interactions with Mr. Hale." She looked up. "Maya, would you mind approaching?" Maya blinked, surprised. Victor nodded to her gently. She stood, still holding Ginger, and approached the bench. The judge leaned down slightly. "Do you feel safe with Mr. Hale?" "Yes," Maya said clearly. "Do you want to live with him?" "Yes." "Do you understand what that means?" Maya tilted her head. "It means I don't have to pack anymore." The judge smiled. "Thank you, Maya. You may sit." Maya returned, climbing back into her seat with a soft exhale. The judge addressed the court. "It is the ruling of this court that the guardianship of Maya Williams by Mr. Victor Hale be upheld without condition, and that proceedings toward formal adoption be recognized and advanced without delay." A wave of release swept through the room. Victor's shoulders fell just slightly. He didn't smile. He only looked at Maya, whose eyes had filled with quiet tears. "Does this mean I stay?" she whispered. He nodded. "It means you're home." Outside, the rain had stopped. Victor lifted Maya in his arms as they exited the courthouse, her curls damp with mist, her arms wrapped tightly around his neck. A reporter shouted a question. Victor didn't answer. He simply opened the door to his car, buckled Maya in gently, and handed her a warm apple muffin from the glove box. She broke it in half and gave him the bigger piece. "For the grown-up who didn't run," she said. Victor took it, and for the first time since he met her, he laughed. Not just politely, not just softly, but fully, the kind of laugh that sounded like someone learning how to breathe again. For the first time in weeks, there were no papers to sign, no reporters to dodge, no hearings to prepare for. Just a house, still and quiet in the early dawn, with soft footsteps padding across polished floors and the smell of toast and cinnamon filling the air. Victor stood at the stove wearing his rarely used apron navy blue with a faint oil stain near the pocket, and flipped a pancake with all the precision of a man who once managed billion-dollar mergers. Maya sat at the kitchen island, chin resting on her hands, watching him with a solemn intensity. "You're not bad at it," she finally said. Victor glanced over. "At what?" "Cooking. You're slow, but the pancakes look like pancakes." His smirked. "High praise." She looked up. "They smell like mornings did. Before." He paused mid-flip. "Before what?" "Before benches," she said simply. Victor turned off the burner. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was reverent, like the moment between notes in a slow song. He slid a pancake onto her plate and sat across from her. "Do you want to talk about it?" She shook her head. "No, but I think about it." "That's okay," he said. "Thinking is part of healing." She picked up a fork. "Are you scared it'll come back?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "The before," she said. "If the quiet goes away. If they come again. If they say you can't keep me." Victor reached across the table, his fingers closing gently over hers. "No one's taking you," he said. "Not now. Not ever." Maya nodded, but her eyes lingered on a scratch on the table's surface, a long, thin line that shimmered in the light. "Even quiet things leave marks," she murmured. Victor followed her gaze. He didn't know whether she was talking about the table, her memories, or herself. Maybe all three. Later that morning, Victor surprised Maya with a trip. Not to a park or a toy store, but to a bookstore, one of those small, wood-shelved, sweet-smelling independent stores with a cat curled near the register and books stacked in lopsided towers. "This is the closest thing to magic I know," Victor said as they walked in. Maya wandered the aisles slowly, fingers brushing over covers like she was meeting people, not pages. She paused in front of a display labeled "Astronomy for Young Readers." She picked up a book and held it to her chest. Victor walked over. "Interested? It has maps in it," she said, "but not of Earth. You've always been more stars than soil," he said. She smiled. "Can I make my own maps one day?" He crouched beside her. "You can make anything." She held the book tightly. "Even if I get things wrong sometimes?" Victor touched her cheek. "Especially then, back at home." Maya spent hours sprawled on the sunroom rug with the new book open and 3 fresh notebooks beside her. She sketched orbits, labeled stars, even started creating stories around imaginary moons. She named one Lena's Light, though she didn't know why. Victor watched from the doorway. She was smiling again, the kind that reached her eyes, the kind that was earned. Later that night, as he tucked her into bed, she asked, "Do people always stay when the court says so?" Victor hesitated. "No," he said honestly. "But I will." She nodded. "Because of the papers?" "No," he said. "Because of you." Maya turned to her side, clutching Ginger close. "Some nights, the silence is loud," she whispered. Victor sat on the edge of her bed. "That's because it has memories inside it. Sometimes good ones, sometimes not." "Do yours talk to you?" she asked. He nodded. "Especially when it's raining." "What do they say?" Victor looked out the window, at the stars above. "They say to keep going." Maya closed her eyes. "Then I will too." Downstairs, Victor opened a folder of documents he hadn't looked at since the adoption was approved. Birth certificate, health reports, a letter from Maya's pediatrician recommending a specialized school for gifted development. He had options. He had resources. But more importantly, he had time. Time to let her grow at her own pace. Time to let her rebuild without deadlines. Time to be a father not in theory, but in the daily weight of showing up. He closed the folder, and for the first time in months, he exhaled without worry. She was his, and he was hers, not because the court said so, but because they had survived the echo of silence together and chosen, again and again, to stay. The trouble started with Ginger. It was a Saturday morning, the kind Victor had once spent reviewing quarterly reports or sipping coffee during silent strategy calls. Now, it began with Maya running down the hall in socks too slippery, holding up her beloved stuffed horse with panic in her voice. "His ear fell off," she cried, eyes wide, as though the world itself had tilted. Victor took the toy gently. Ginger's left ear, which had been slowly loosening for weeks, now dangled by a single thread. "We can fix it," he said calmly. Maya bit her lip. "But it won't be the same." He crouched in front of her, leveling their gaze. "No, but it can still be strong. Like you." She looked at Ginger again. "He didn't cry when it came off." "That's because he's brave," Victor said. Maya whispered, "Like when you found me." He paused. Something about the way she said "found me" struck him like a ripple in a still lake. "Want to help me sew it?" he asked. Her face lit up. They sat at the kitchen table together, Victor threading the needle while Maya held Ginger steady. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "A little. What if I poke him?" "He's been through worse," Victor said with a wink. Maya giggled, then grew serious. "Can we give him a story about his ear? So he knows it's okay?" Victor nodded. "Let's hear it." She thought hard. Maybe a storm blew through his stable, and he protected the other animals by standing in front of the wind. Victor smiled, very heroic. "And when it was over," she added, "he lost an ear, but the animals built him a new stable made of stardust. Now that's a recovery story." They stitched the ear back together. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Maya kissed Ginger's forehead and whispered something Victor didn't hear. She placed the horse beside her bowl of oatmeal like a dinner guest. Victor watched in silence. To anyone else, it was just a child with a toy. But he saw something sacred, a child reclaiming her story. That afternoon, Ellen brought in a letter. From the local district school, she said, eyes cautious. Victor read it quickly. The tone was cordial, but the message was clear. Your child has missed the standardized entry assessment period. If she does not complete it within the next 30 days, her placement will be delayed an entire year. He folded the letter with a slow sigh. It was always something. Maya had already begun learning at her own rhythm, working with a private tutor twice a week, reading books far beyond her age, sketching equations that didn't make sense to most adults. But the system had its schedule, its boxes, its checklists. Victor brought the topic up gently during dinner. Maya was lining up blueberries on her plate, creating a constellation she called the thinking horse. They want you to take a test, he said. She didn't look up. What kind of test? To see how you'd fit in at the local school. I don't like boxes. I know, but sometimes we go through boxes to show we don't belong in one. She considered that. Can I bring Ginger? Maybe not inside, but he'll be close. Maya picked up a blueberry, rolled it between her fingers, and whispered, will they think I'm weird? Victor leaned in. Maya, weird isn't the worst thing someone can be. What is? Cruel. She nodded. I can't be cruel. It makes my stomach twist. That's how I know you're already ahead of the test. On the day of the exam, Maya wore her green rain boots even though it wasn't raining. For luck, she said. Victor drove her to the school and waited outside the small testing room with a view of the playground. He watched the clock. 45 minutes. Then 60. Then 75. Finally, the door opened. The proctor stepped out young, kind-eyed, visibly stunned. She finished everything, he said to Victor, still adjusting his glasses. Even the optional sections. She solved a logic puzzle I couldn't even decipher. Victor smiled slightly. That sounds like her. The man lowered his voice. She did something with a number pattern that shouldn't be possible. She said the numbers were talking to each other in round tones. What does that mean? It means she's explaining something none of us have language for yet. Victor peeked inside. Maya was sitting quietly at the desk, legs swinging, Ginger perched beside her like a sentinel. She looked up. That was loud. He walked in. Loud? In my head, she said. I had to make the numbers quiet down. Victor smiled. Did you win? I asked them to whisper. That night, they sat on the front porch with mugs of warm milk and a plate of butter cookies. Maya leaned her head on Victor's arm. Do you think I'm normal now? She asked. He looked at the stars. I don't think normal exists. But that's what the tests want. Yes, but tests can't measure everything. What can? Victor wrapped his arm around her shoulder. Love, safety. The way you notice when someone's about to cry. Even when they're smiling. She was quiet a moment. I used to think no one saw me. I see you, he said. Maya looked up. Even when I don't talk? Especially then. She looked down at Ginger. His ear's better, but he still remembers. That's okay. Scars are stories with the pain removed. She nodded, thoughtful. Can I have a scar that means I stayed? Victor kissed her forehead. You already do. Somewhere deep in the house, the wind creaked an old window. Maya didn't flinch. She was learning, finally, that not all sounds were warnings, that some noises just meant you were still here. Alive, held, healed. The question came out of nowhere halfway through a quiet Tuesday afternoon, with Maya lying on the living room floor, coloring galaxies on an old grocery bag. Do I have a birthday? Victor looked up from his laptop, startled. He closed the lid slowly. What do you mean? Maya didn't lift her eyes. I mean, everyone has one. A birthday, a cake day, when people say, "You're here," and we're glad. She paused, her voice shrinking. I don't remember mine. Victor walked over and sat beside her on the floor, crossing his legs carefully to match her posture. We couldn't find any record, he said gently. No certificate, no photos. Your mom never registered a birth date with the hospital. So I just don't have one? He took a breath. You have one. We just don't know which day it is. She nodded slowly. Then how do I know when I'm getting older? You already are, Victor smiled. Every time you ask a big question like that. Dawn. She looked up, her eyes wet and vulnerable. But if I don't have a day, then how do people remember me? Victor leaned forward, his voice low and warm. We remember you every day, Maya. But if it matters to you, we can choose one. A day that's just for you. Maya considered this. Can I pick one that means something? Of course. She turned to her coloring. Then I want the day you waited. He blinked. Waited? At the bus bench, she whispered. You sat with me when I didn't say anything. That was the first time I didn't feel invisible. Victor swallowed hard. We'll make that day your birthday, he said. And every year we'll celebrate the day the world saw you. Maya smiled. Then I'll never forget again. The day arrived 2 weeks later. Victor pulled out all the stops, though not in the flashy, billionaire way tabloids often described. No media, no headlines, just a quiet backyard picnic under strings of fairy lights. The table decorated with hand-cut stars Maya had made herself. Ellen baked a strawberry cake with little sugar planets on top. Dr. Caldwell dropped by with a science puzzle wrapped in galaxy paper. Even their neighbor, Mr. Thompson, came by with an old telescope he'd fixed up just for her. Maya wore a silver ribbon in her curls, and a dress that Victor had surprised her with that morning covered in constellations. She looked at herself in the mirror for a long time, then whispered, I look like a sky. Victor knelt beside her. You are one. During the party, Maya noticed something strange. Everyone else was enjoying themselves laughing, sharing stories, but Victor kept stepping away, checking his phone, pacing near the back gate. She found him by the garden, staring at his screen. You're missing the cake, she said softly. Victor blinked, then slipped the phone into his pocket. Sorry, he said. I'm here. Who was it? He hesitated. Someone from your past. They tried to contact me. Maya's small body stiffened. Franklin? She asked, barely breathing. No, he said quickly. Not him. It was a woman, she says. She knew your mother. Maya stepped closer. Did she know my real birthday? Victor nodded. She might. Do I want to know it? Maya whispered. He crouched down. Only if you want to. Your birthday is the day you choose to matter. You already chose one. The rest is history. Maya studied him for a long time. Let's keep the day you waited, she said, because that's when everything changed. As the sun set, everyone gathered for cake. Maya sat at the head of the table, beaming, holding ginger in one hand and a sparkler in the other. Victor lit the candles and stepped back. Make a wish, he said. Maya closed her eyes, thought for a moment, then blew them out with one strong breath. Ellen clapped. Caldwell smiled, and Victor leaned down to whisper, What did you wish for? Maya grinned. I wish that this wasn't a wish. He looked at her, puzzled. That this is already real, she explained, and I don't need to wish anymore. Victor's heart clenched. It was the kind of thing you never forget, not because it was grand, but because it was true. That night, after everyone left and the candles were packed away, Victor found Maya asleep on the couch, curled up in a blanket, her cheeks still pink from laughter. Beside her was a folded piece of paper. He opened it quietly. It was a drawing him and her, standing at a bus bench under stars. Written above them in blocky, slanted letters were the words, You didn't find me, I found us. Victor sat beside her and whispered, Happy birthday, Maya. She didn't stir, but her hand reached out in her sleep and found his. Held it. Didn't let go. The storm rolled in unexpectedly, one of those East Coast spring tempests that darkens the sky in a matter of minutes. Thunder cracked overhead like a cannon, and the power flickered once, then held. Victor stood at the large window in the living room, watching the trees bend against the wind. In his hand was the letter. The woman had written again. Her name was Carla Monroe, and she claimed to have been a friend of Maya's late mother. The envelope was hand-addressed, the paper yellowed at the edges, but what made Victor pause was the photograph she'd enclosed. A black and white snapshot, faded. It showed a woman young, laughing, her arm around a little girl. The girl had Maya's eyes. Victor hadn't shown Maya yet. He wasn't sure if he should. Behind him, the sound of small feet approached. "Is it going to be loud tonight?" Maya asked, clutching Ginger by the neck. Victor turned to her. "Just some thunder. You want me to close the curtains?" She shook her head. "No, I want to see what it looks like when the sky's mad." He smiled. "It's not mad. It's just talking louder than usual." She climbed onto the couch and sat beside him. "Sometimes I do that too." "I know," he said warmly, "and sometimes it helps." "Men." They watched in silence for a moment as lightning flashed across the backyard, lighting up the swing set Victor had installed the month before. Then Maya asked, "Were you ever scared when you were little?" Victor looked out at the storm. "Yes," he said softly, "once." "What happened?" "There was a night when no one came home." Maya tilted her head. "Where were they?" "Gone," he said simply, "and I didn't know if they'd come back. I remember sitting at the window and waiting, trying not to cry, because I thought the tears would make it worse." "Did they come back?" Victor turned to her. "No." She leaned against his side. "Then how did you know how to wait with me?" He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "Because I remembered what it felt like when no one did." That night, the wind howled hard enough to set off the porch motion lights. Maya lay in bed under 3 blankets, her eyes wide open. "Victor?" she called. He appeared at the door, already knowing. "Want me to stay?" She nodded. He sat beside her bed, and she slid her hand into his without a word. After a moment, she whispered, "You can tell me now." "Tell you what?" "About the lady, the one from the letter." Victor hesitated. "How did you know?" "You get quiet when you're hiding something," she said. "It's a different kind of quiet than you're thinking quiet." He smiled faintly. "Her name is Carla. She says she knew your mother. Does she want me?" Victor didn't answer immediately. "She says she wants to talk." Maya turned on her side. "Do you want me to?" "I want what you want." She looked up. "Will it change anything?" "Only if we let it." Maya was silent, her little fingers curling tighter around his. "Maybe we can meet her," she said, "if she's not loud." "We can do that." "Not tomorrow," Maya added. "I need one more quiet day." Victor kissed her forehead. "You've got it." "That's it." The next morning, the storm was gone. Sunlight poured in through the windows, making the house feel new, like someone had scrubbed the sky clean. Victor made blueberry waffles, and Maya insisted on using the good syrup reserved for celebration mornings. She wore her yellow overalls and a shirt that said "Small but Mighty." After breakfast, Victor placed the photo on the table. Maya looked at it for a long time. "That's her," she said finally. "You remember her?" "Only in dreams. She smelled like oranges." Victor smiled. "That sounds like someone kind. She used to hum while washing my hair," Maya whispered. "But I don't know what the song was." "We can find out," he said. She nodded. "Okay. But not today. I want to finish my space map." Victor took her hand. "No rush." That evening, he called Carla. Her voice was older, raspy but clear. "I wasn't sure you'd respond," she said. "I didn't at first," Victor replied. "We're protective of Maya." "You should be. She was always special." Victor asked, "Why now?" A long pause. "I should have come sooner." Carla said. But grief does strange things, and guilt does stranger. I wasn't strong enough before. I didn't know if I deserved to see her again. You were her mother's friend? Her sister, Carla said quietly. Half-sister. Same dad. Different lives. Victor closed his eyes. Your family. By blood, she replied. But I want to be more than that, if she'll let me. Ugh. Victor thought of Maya's quiet resilience, her way of seeing the world, her ability to draw stars out of strangers. She might, he said, but only gently. She doesn't do loud anymore. Neither do I. As Victor hung up the phone, Maya entered the room with a finished drawing in her hands. It showed 3 figures standing under a dome of stars. A tall man, a girl, and a third shape, a woman, holding a flower. What's her name? Victor asked, pointing. Maya smiled faintly. I don't know yet, she said, but I think she used to sing. Victor Kelt Billionaire. Then maybe we'll listen. In the quiet. After storms and questions and ghosts from the past, there was one thing that had become clear. Maya was building a world with space for truth, but only at the pace of trust. And Victor, he would follow her rhythm, no matter how long it took. They chose the cafe on the corner of Elm and Harrison, not too big, not too loud. The kind with dusty bookshelves, creaky chairs, and the smell of nutmeg in every breath of air. Victor had scouted it himself the day before. Low ceilings, quiet music, and plenty of corners for privacy. Maya arrived holding Ginger under her arm and a notebook in her hand. She'd drawn a box on the first page and labeled it, Feelings I Might Feel. Inside, she'd written, scared, curious, hopeful, angry maybe, okay, if quiet. Victor sat beside her in the booth, offering her a small nod. You don't have to talk if you don't want to. You just listen. I brought Ginger in case she talks too fast, Maya said. He understands pauses. Victor smiled gently. So do I. A few minutes later, Carla Monroe entered. She was smaller than Maya had imagined, gray curls pulled into a loose bun, dark eyes sunken but warm, and a scarf around her shoulders like armor made of memory. She looked like someone trying to carry something heavy without making noise. She paused when she saw Maya, and for a long moment, no one spoke. Then Carla stepped closer, cautiously, like approaching a wild creature she hoped wouldn't run. You have her eyes, she said softly. Maya clutched Ginger tighter. Carla didn't sit yet. She knelt instead carefully, with a quiet grunt of age. I'm Carla, she said. Your mama was my sister. We didn't grow up together, but we ended together. I held her hand the last time she laughed. Maya blinked. What did it sound like? Carla's eyes glistened, like wind chimes and orange soda fizz, like something leaving and staying all at once. Victor reached under the table and lightly touched Maya's hand. She told me about you, Carla said. Said your thoughts didn't come out the way other people wanted, but they came out right. She said you heard things other folks missed. Maya whispered, like music under quiet. Yes, Carla said, just like that. Victor finally spoke. You said you had something of her mother's? Carla nodded, pulling a small box from her bag. Inside was a folded piece of sheet music, yellowed and torn at the corners. She wrote this, Carla said. She used to hum it while doing dishes. Said it helped Maya sleep when she was little. Maya unfolded the paper gently. There were no words, just notes. Faint, rising, falling, then rising again. I don't know what the song is called, Carla added. She never named it. Maya whispered. I remember it. The whole cafe seemed to pause. Victor felt something shift like a tight knot inside Maya unwinding. Slowly, carefully. She used to press her hand on my back, Maya said, to the rhythm. Carla, still kneeling, asked softly, would it be all right if I came again? Not to take up space, just to share some. Maya studied her, long and slow. Then she held out Ginger. Can you hold him? She asked. Carla blinked, then reached out and gently took the stuffed horse. "Do I pass the test?" she asked. Maya shrugged. "Not yet. But you didn't fail." Carla laughed, a small, weathered sound that carried more gratitude than most people could say in words. After the meeting, Victor and Maya walked through the nearby park. The cherry blossoms were just starting to bloom, delicate, pink, and trembling with each breeze. "Was it weird?" Victor asked. Maya shook her head. "Not weird, just wide." Wide? Like I opened a new hallway in my memory, and now there are rooms with lights I didn't know existed. Victor nodded. "Do you want to see her again?" "Maybe. When my hallway feels less echoey." He reached down and took her hand. "You're in charge of the doors," he said. They passed a small pond where ducks were gliding like paper boats. "I liked that she didn't try to hug me," Maya said suddenly. Victor smiled. "She waited for you." "She didn't try to be my mom," Maya added. "She just told the truth." Victor stopped and knelt beside her. "Truth is the first kindness," he said. "Everything else grows from there." She looked up at him. "Is that why you never lied about the hard stuff?" He brushed a curl from her face. "I promised I wouldn't, because you deserve a life without guessing games." Maya nodded slowly. "I think Mama would have liked you." Victor swallowed hard. "That means everything." That night, Maya sat at her small keyboard by the window. The stars were out, and she was trying to plunk out the melody from the sheet music, one note at a time. Victor stood behind her, listening. "It's like I'm remembering someone else's memory," she said. "Maybe it's yours too," he replied. She played a few more notes, paused, and then whispered, "I think I'm going to name the song." He waited. She smiled, not turning around. "It's called Waiting Together." Victor nodded slowly, letting the silence wrap around them like a soft shawl. The storm had passed, the music had begun, and Maya's world had just grown one room wider. The email came late one evening, long after Maya had gone to sleep. Victor was standing in the study, reading a biography on systems theory when his phone buzzed. The sender, PBS NewsHour. The subject line, "Request for interview. Maya Williams and Victor Hale." The body of the email was respectful, the tone curious. The anchor, a woman known for her calm and thoughtful reporting, wanted to speak with them not for sensation, but for story. A conversation. A deeper look into a quiet, unexpected bond that had captured the nation's attention. Victor sat with it for hours. He wasn't one to seek the spotlight. He had spent most of his business career behind the scenes, building empires in silence. But this story, Maya's story, was no longer just theirs. And maybe, just maybe, it could help others. He printed the email and left it on the breakfast table. When Maya came downstairs the next morning, rubbing sleep from her eyes, she spotted the paper immediately. "Is it about me?" she asked. Victor poured her juice. "It's about us." "Are we in trouble?" He smiled. "No, quite the opposite. Someone wants to hear how we became a family." Maya blinked slowly. "Will they ask about the bench?" "Maybe." She bit her lip. "And about Franklin?" "I'll make sure they only ask what you want to answer." Maya sat with that a long time, stirring her oatmeal. "If I say no, will you still tell my story?" "No," Victor said gently. "It's not mine to tell without you." She looked up. "Then let's do it. But I want to bring Ginger." He grinned. "Ginger goes where you go. Non-negotiable." The studio was warmer than Maya expected. She wore her favorite red sweater and a blue skirt, and Victor helped tuck her curls behind her ears. Ginger sat proudly on her lap, his newly stitched ear slightly crooked but full of dignity. The interviewer's name was Ruth Avery, a woman in her 60s with silver braids and a voice like warm velvet. She knelt before Maya first. "I'm honored to meet you," Ruth said sincerely. "You don't have to answer anything you don't want to. You can blink twice if I'm going too fast." Maya giggled. "Can I blink if you ask a boring question?" Ruth laughed. Especially then. Victor sat beside Maya, a protective but relaxed presence. The cameras rolled, the lights softened, and the questions began. Victor, you're a billionaire with access to nearly everything. What made you stop at a bus bench? Victor answered without blinking, because that's where the most important person I'd ever meet happened to be sitting. Ruth turned to Maya. And Maya, what made you trust him? Maya leaned forward, serious. He didn't ask me to say anything. He just Saturday. Ruth's brow rose. That's powerful. Maya shrugged. Most people want you to talk right away. He waited. The interview deepened from there. They spoke about Maya's journey not as a trauma story, but as a transformation. Victor described the early days. The silence. The sleepless nights. The slow blooming of trust. Maya shared what she called her firsts. The first time I laughed without checking if it was okay, she said. The first time I slept without dreaming of being left. The first time I asked for more pancakes. When asked about school, Maya said, tests don't know what I know, but Mr. Hale does. Ruth's voice caught for a second. She turned to Victor. What have you learned from Maya? He smiled. How to listen. How to sit still. How to wait without needing to fix. No. And what do you hope people understand from your story? Victor looked at Maya. That healing is slow. But love isn't, he said. Love moves at the speed of trust. After the interview, as the cameras powered down, Ruth leaned in privately. Would Maya ever be open to composing something? A song? We'd love to feature her art during the closing segment. Maya's eyes lit up. I already have one, she whispered. It's called Waiting Together. Ruth's eyes moistened. Then I'll wait to hear it. That night, back home, Victor made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup their comfort meal of choice. Maya sat at the piano, working through the melody again. Slower now, more deliberate. Victor watched her, hands in his pockets, his heart full. She was building something. Not just music. A life. A self. A future. And now, the world would hear her on her terms. As she played the final note, Maya turned. Was I too quiet on camera? She asked. Victor walked over and kissed the top of her head. You were exactly the kind of loud that matters. She smiled, then whispered, I want to make more songs, for other kids who are waiting. Victor's voice cracked as he replied, You already have. Outside, the moon was high. The bench that once held her pain was now a memory and a symbol. And somewhere in America, someone watching the screen would see her and say, if she can be heard, maybe I can too. Nauerzer, the segment aired on a Thursday night. Victor and Maya watched it together on the couch, a bowl of popcorn between them, Ginger perched like royalty on the armrest. PBS had done it justice. Soft lighting. No dramatic music, just truth. Their truth. Ruth Avery's voice guided viewers through the gentle storm of Maya's journey. And when Maya's song, Waiting Together, played during the credits, Victor saw something extraordinary. Maya didn't flinch. She didn't cover her ears. She didn't look away. She listened, like she believed it, like it was hers. The next morning, the mail came in bundles. Ellen dropped the stack onto Victor's desk with wide eyes. You're going to want to see this. Letters, dozens of them, from parents, teachers, grandparents, strangers, and from kids. Some were typed, some scribbled in crayon. One was written entirely in symbols and stars. Victor picked one at random and opened it. A young boy had written, I didn't talk for a long time either, but I watched your girl on TV. I think I'm gonna try again. Another, my daughter is 9. She thought she was broken. After hearing Maya, she asked to write a poem. She hasn't written anything in 2 years. Victor read in silence, moved beyond words. Then he found one addressed simply to Maya Williams, the girl with the music. He knocked gently on Maya's door and peeked in. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, her keyboard beside her, pencil in hand, sketching what looked like a map of colors. "These are sound moods," she explained. "Blue is thinking. Red is when people interrupt. Yellow is Ginger's favorite." Victor smiled. "There's something I want to show you." She followed him to the study, her eyes widening at the sea of envelopes. "Are those for me?" she whispered. "For us, but mostly you." He handed her the top letter. She opened it carefully, like it might break. Inside was a simple note from a girl named Ellie, age 10. "Dear Maya, you made me feel not weird. I liked your quiet. I think maybe mine is good too. Love, Ellie." Maya blinked, slowly, then whispered, "Can we write back?" Victor nodded. "Every single one." For the next few days, the house transformed into a reply factory. Maya dictated, and Victor typed. She drew stars at the bottom of each letter, color-coded by mood. If the note was about fear, she added a green star. If it was about courage, a purple one. She signed them all. "From your quiet friend, Maya." Ellen created a spreadsheet. Dr. Caldwell brought by extra envelopes. Even grumpy old Mr. Thompson from next door offered to pay for stamps. It became a movement. People didn't just want to watch Maya. They wanted to join her. Later that week, Ruth Avery called. "I have a proposition," she said. Victor raised a brow. "I'm listening." "No, a follow-up series. We call it The Bench Project. We feature stories from kids who've been left behind physically, emotionally, systemically. Maya becomes our symbolic co-host. She doesn't like crowds," Victor varned. "We film in her space," Ruth said, "on her terms. No big lights, no fake moments, just truth." Victor hesitated. "She's still healing." Ruth replied softly, "Sometimes healing grows stronger when it helps someone else." He turned to look out the window, where Maya was in the yard drawing chalk spirals on the patio stones. "Let me ask her." That night, he explained it gently. Maya listened, serious and still. "Do I have to be the answer?" she asked. "No," Victor said. "Just a mirror." She thought for a long time, tracing the edge of her mug with a finger. "I want to, but only if we show the benches too." "The benches? Where people are left," she said, "because that's where we find each other." "No." Victor nodded. "Then we'll start with yours." The first shoot took place the following week. Just Victor, just Maya, and the bench, the same bench, still there, a little rustier, a little more forgotten but no longer alone. They didn't film a performance, they filmed presence. Maya sat, her feet dangling. She didn't speak for the first few minutes, just breathed. When she did speak, it was barely above a whisper. "I waited here," she said, "and someone waited with me." She paused. "If you're on a bench, and you feel invisible, this is me saying I see you." Victor stood behind the camera, one hand on his chest, trying not to cry, failing. When the episode aired, it cracked something open in people. The bench became a symbol. Across the country, kids started sharing their own bench stories. Teachers created quiet corners in classrooms. Libraries began holding silent circles for children who preferred gesture to speech. And Victor? He watched it all unfold, not as a billionaire, not even as a father, but as a witness to the small, steady revolution of a girl who once had no birthday, no voice, no place, and who now gave all three to others. That night, Maya stood in the kitchen, stirring cocoa with a cinnamon stick. She looked up. "Do you think benches get lonely?" Victor smiled. "Not anymore." She nodded. "Tomorrow," she said, "can we paint one?" He blinked. "A bench?" "A blue one," she said, "for the next kid who needs to be found." Victor reached for her hand. "We'll paint 100. She looked at him, her voice soft and strong. "Start with one." It stood at the edge of the park, freshly painted, sturdy, and simple. A bench, like any other, except for its color. Blue, not navy, not sky. It was the kind of blue Maya had chosen herself. The soft in-between shade of a thought waiting to form. The color of safety. of memory, of waiting but not alone. Victor stood beside her, holding the small brass plaque they were about to screw into the wood. "What do you want it to say?" he asked again. Maya thought hard. Then she handed him a crumpled sticky note, her handwriting slanted and precise. He read aloud, "If you're sitting here, you matter. I see you. Maya W." Victor swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded. "Perfect." Together, they attached it. Maya held the screws steady while Victor turned the screwdriver. "Will people believe it?" she asked. "That they matter?" She nodded. Victor looked out at the park at the kids playing, the parents watching, the quiet ones walking alone. "They'll believe it when they need to," he said. "That's when benches do their best work." In the weeks that followed, the bench project became more than a segment, it became a movement. People across the country began painting benches. Blue in Atlanta, teal in Tacoma, sky-washed slats in the South Bronx. Each one carried a different version of Maya's message. "I see you." Some were scrawled in permanent marker. Some etched in metal. Some left with blank cards for people to write their own thoughts. Victor installed a map in Maya's room. Every time a new bench was sent in, they placed a star on the city. Within a month, the United States looked like a night sky. One afternoon, as the first warm days of summer crept in, Maya stood on the original bus bench, the one where everything began. Victor watched from a distance, letting her be alone with it. She placed Ginger beside her, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Carefully, she smoothed it down on the bench seat. It was the photo Carla had given her of her mother holding her as a toddler. She'd drawn a small blue star in the corner. Maya whispered, "You don't have to worry. I'm not invisible anymore." A wind passed through the park, brushing her curls. Victor walked over slowly, sitting beside her. "Do you think she sees you now?" he asked. Maya nodded. "I think she always did. I just couldn't feel it until someone waited long enough for me to notice." They sat for a while, watching people pass. Then Maya turned to Victor. "Do you remember the first thing I said to you?" He smiled. "You didn't say anything." "No," she said. "I said, please don't be loud." Victor laughed gently. "You did." She leaned into his side. "You kept that promise." He wrapped his arm around her. "And you kept showing up." That evening, back at home, Ellen brought out a cake. Not for a birthday, not for a holiday, just because. The frosting said, "We see you." Maya cut the first slice. Victor served everyone else. And in the warm light of the kitchen, with laughter echoing softly, the bench outside waited for its next story. Years later, when Maya was older, when her hair grew long and her name appeared in books and classrooms and therapy offices, she still came back to the blue bench. Sometimes she came alone, sometimes with a notebook, sometimes with a child who needed a place to not speak until they were ready. The plaque had faded, but the meaning had deepened. And when people asked her what it all meant, how a billionaire and a broken-hearted girl created a movement, she'd smile and say, "It wasn't about saving, it was about staying." And when they asked, "What do you call it?" she'd say, "I call it love, but quiet." This story teaches us that love doesn't always arrive with noise or grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in the quiet act of staying. It reminds us that being seen, truly seen, can begin the healing of deep, invisible wounds. Maya's journey shows that broken beginnings don't define us. It's the people who wait beside us, who believe in our worth before we can speak it ourselves, that shape who we become. In a world that often rewards loudness, waiting together shows the quiet power of patience,